Come, spellweavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. And this is one of the few episodes where we can actually say that with some degree of authority, because it's not just me. We have a fellow young guy who's in this old school world tonight. You all know him. You love him. You love him a hell of a lot more than you love me. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ben Barsh.
That's something of an intro. I would doubt that is true. Thank you very much for having me, first of all.
Well, you do more than I do. You like make adventures and do all kinds of cool books. You and your dad have some great products. I do this.
I've done podcasts too. I've done all forms of internet content you could ever imagine. It is definitely, there's no walk in the park here at all. This is a hard job, and it's you do it really well. This is higher produced than anything that I did when I did podcasts, so I'm impressed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But no, tonight we are happy to finally have you on here. I am hoping against all hope that like lightning doesn't strike my house or something, because this interview has been cursed for quite some time.
It's true. Speaking of lightning, I feel like there's so much light behind me. So excuse me, everyone, as I just. Is that better? No, that's not better at all. Well, we'll figure it out. We're gonna roll with the punches. There has to be some sort of lightning here, so that's right. It's right behind there.
Absolutely. All right, and Victor in chat, I appreciate it, and yes, I do know that you love me, Victor. I really do appreciate that. So, thank you.
Victor's the man.
And I say they love you more than they love me because last Friday on Legion of Myth's chill stream, I kind of made some people mad.
What'd you do?
I started going in on how tabletop games are a balance between narrative and simulation, with leaning more heavily on the narrative side. And that in and of itself made people upset. And then my continued explanation of why I thought that also made some people upset.
Yeah, you're never gonna please anyone or everyone. Sorry, sometimes anyone, but yeah, yeah. I think I kind of agree with you, honestly. Should we restart this battle? No, I'm just trying. I agree with you.
It was more, and we'll get into questions here in just a little bit. It was more. I was putting forward a scenario in which a wizard would not be able to cast a fireball behind like a wall of enemies because he couldn't see past the enemies. And so if he tried to, there would be kind of an element of randomness that would have to come into what he was doing. And for some reason that upset people to no end.
I feel like line of sight is a necessary mechanic in many cases. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm riding with you.
Sweet. All right, you guys hear that? Ben agreed with me. So if any of you came over here from Friday looking for another piece of it, bring it. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm healthy and ready to go many rounds.
Absolutely.
Hop in the ring, the octagon, wherever we want to go.
Absolutely. So are you up for that hair versus hair match that I've been talking about on episodes?
Yeah. I actually sort of started to do my hair differently. I've in past it's gone over, and now I just sort of do a disheveled front thing. So this is actually where I'm debuting it. This is the new look. I'm gonna rock it for the foreseeable future. So yeah, this is the new competition.
Absolutely. Although you are both far taller and far more handsome than me. I'm a dwarf for people.
I would disagree. I can't grow facial hair.
Well,
I cannot. I'm babyface for the rest of my life.
That's just one aspect of I guess male beauty, if you want to call it that. But no, for people who have not seen me in person, I am very compact. I am short and stocky, and Ben is very, very tall. So he's got that
tall
on me.
and lanky. Yeah. Sorry, I'm turning this down. God, it's just like light of Valinor opened on my computer. For the love of God. There we go. That's a little better at least.
Awesome.
Not totally washed out. Sorry about that, everyone.
All right, well, enough of the weird comments about your looks and my looks, because it's just it's weird. But I started it, so
right. Yeah, we can sail right out of it.
Yeah,
you know? Like the Numenorians, we're just right
absolutely,
out. Right gone.
Absolutely. Forget that first couple minutes happened. So, introductory questions that everyone gets asked when they come on Rollin' Bones.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard this before, but let's begin at the beginning. How did you get involved in and interested in role-playing games?
I think this one is a little easier answering because you just had my dad on 2 weeks ago, or however long it was ago. I got in through him. Basically, when we as in me and my sisters were really young, we started playing a game called Fantasy Forest. It's up in that top corner there. If anyone's never played it, it's an introductory to role-playing game, board game for children made by TSR. So we played that for many, many years. And then we upgraded to the game Dungeon a little bit later on, and then upgraded to Dungeons and Dragons sort of through this progression of TSR board game. So I would say, I've been in it my entire life because of my dad. I've always been interested in RPGs in general, especially video game ones as well. So just a child of circumstance, I guess, is the short story at the end of that long one.
Was there ever a moment in your life where you had a moment of rebellion and went, you know what, Dad, I want to be normal. Darn it.
No, because I wasn't normal before that. I mean, I was in the sense that I played football, I played baseball, I played basketball growing up. So I did like the normal things, but then I would go home and then I would go home and play solo D&D at night, or I would play like World of Warcraft, so this has always been just me. And my dad just sort of gave me the push, like, here's your head, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think that's a thing that a lot of us who grew up without parents who were like into this stuff, there was a point where we kind of cloaked ourselves in it as a way to like rebel against our parents, and then later found some kind of balance in our lives. And so I've always been curious about people who grew up with parents who were into this stuff, but it sounds like you kind of had that healthy balance all along. So that is good to hear.
That's actually pretty common, I think, in the industry as well. I've met over the years, I've been able to meet a bunch of other people around my age, or even kids now who have gamer parents. And the gamer parents are always pretty cool about it. They'll be like, oh yeah, like this is my kid, like they're at the convention, my other kid's not really into it. So that like gamer parents are cool. They don't like force anyone to do anything. Like if you're into it, they'll bring you in. If they're not, you can just do your own thing. So yeah, it's a great community, and it's ever growing too. Which is the youngsters of the OSR. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So of all the games that you've played just kind of throughout your life, throughout your career playing RPGs, what would you say is your favorite, if you had to pick a favorite?
Well, my favorite I was actually talking to one of my artists about this today. We just started working with him on a new book coming up, which is fantastic. But we were kind of talking about this. Dungeons and Dragons is definitely my favorite RPG. So from there, it sort of just gets into like which edition that month am I into more, really? Which is a constant battle between 1E D&D and 5th edition. I would say AD&D is always number one. Like there could be almost nothing that 5e could do because it couldn't replace that originality of the game and the raw essence of what's everything that's come from it. It's sort of like Jordan versus LeBron. Like Jordan was the first all-time great, but then there's LeBron who's like undeniable as well. So how do you handle it? So that's sort of how AD&D and 5e for me. So I will answer with both because that's I can't, it's like picking between a kid, which I think is hard. I don't have kids, so I don't.
Oh, I only have one, so it's easy for me, but for other people, I imagine.
Yeah, right.
But I imagine that is an answer that might have some people like breaking bottles on a table, being like, "All right, we're gonna go now." Because
it's the best. They don't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
That's the best part, is people don't know what to do with me, because people like the old grognards and stuff, they're like, oh, he's just a young kid. And then like the 5e people are like, you play what? Like, I didn't even know there's games before fourth. Like, that's, you know what I mean? They have no idea.
Yeah.
So people are just confused, and I'm like, stay confused. That's where I like.
Because that was another thing I ran into with the Legion of Myth crowd. I've got an episode next week where me and a guy named Crafty Matt Craft are going to do what we're calling a defense of 5e, because I also have some fondness for 5e. It's how I learned how to game, how to DM, and I think there are some really strong points to 5e. It's not my favorite anymore, but there's a lot to like there. And saying that, and then also saying that you could run 5e in an OSR way, caused some degree of confusion / anger amongst the chill stream audience last night. But then also Victor, who was on that stream with me, he is also split in that way between the 5e and the OSR.
Yeah, I think people who think that you can't run a 5e game that feels old school simply haven't played 5e enough, or haven't DM'd 5e enough. It's all about presentation, at the end of the day. And the dungeon master. I've had dungeon masters in old school who I'm like, whoa, this was so like not BX. And then I've had, DMs in 5e who I'm like, whoa, I feel like I'm like playing at Tim Cass table. So it really just it's just up to the individual, is what always these arguments always come back to. But that's not fun, because that's not a conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like I've been trying to tell people, and I hope this is something that can catch on, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. I think OSR is a state of mind more than anything else. But like I said, we'll come back to that topic, because there are more introductory questions we have for you.
Sure. Yeah. I know. We're already getting off the rails on all this stuff. That's my bad though, because I just talk.
It's all good. Last week we got to 2 of the introductory questions just because of all the side conversations and it's
yeah.
But when it comes to running games and playing in games, I know you've mentioned some BX games that didn't feel quite right, and some 5e games that had that kind of delightful old school flavor. When you are running a game and when you are playing in a game, what is it that you're looking for to get out of that game? What style are you going for as a player and as a GM when you take on both roles?
So I think intrinsically DMing, what DMs want to get out of a game is inherently different than what a player wants to, and I think it's okay to acknowledge the differences.
Yeah.
Because they sound weird when I'm going to say them out loud, but I think a DM is more of a selfless, like they're looking to selflessly get something out of the game, whereas players sometimes are selfishly, and that's not a bad thing by any means. But I want to say that a million times, it's not a bad thing. But players often have personal goals with their character, on what they want to achieve, whether that's a certain power level through abilities unlocked, or a narrative goal that they want to achieve. That's often a little bit more selfish. So I think DMs, like going into the game, you just have much different things to worry about. So when I'm a player, often I want to get out. What I want to get out of the game is some sort of advancement on my character, so I don't feel like they're stuck in the mud or not progressing or not having an arc. And then when I'm DMing, I really like to make sure that those people are having that arc, right, and having that reasonable progression, which is really kind of hard to attain sometimes. It's hard to get that a good flow of progression for everyone involved. So it's just kind of different intrinsically. But I think both of them, like, there's nothing wrong with both of them, and they're both great reasons to play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that I have started thinking about it is, as the GM, you are hoping to entertain, Whereas a
Mhm.
lot of times with players, and this is going to sound like a knock on players, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Players are there to be entertained.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think these conversations sometimes do sound like knock on players, but they're not,
Right.
because that's why we entertain. That's why we create progression systems, right?
Yep.
So people can be rewarded through them. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and even when people take super hard lines about DMing, like I have in the past, the hope is that in taking these hard lines and setting these limits on what we want in the game, or what we think belongs in the game, we're hoping to make a more entertaining experience for the players, and that
Mhm.
will bring some degree of enjoyment out of it. So I it's something that's definitely worth exploring in depth. Maybe someday, if I can finally get short form videos like to be a thing for me, I might make a video about it. But it's an interesting dynamic, and one that I feel like, again, raises a lot of temperatures and makes a lot of people like slam their fist on the table and go, "That's not the way it's supposed to be."
Yeah. Well, I think that the counter argument to things of that nature are like, there is an extent to which the players want the person next to them to have a good time, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a completely selfish thing where all of your actions are going to be chaotic selfish, right? That's
Right.
not at all. But what I'm saying is the DM has the means to that end more than a player often does, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a very that is a very deep conversation that
It is.
would also need people on the the different opinions of it as well,
Yeah,
because it's just an interesting idea to think about. I'm
absolutely.
more of a deep thinker instead of a one-off answer or a short answer. Just a heads up,
All good.
the audience might be like, "Oh God, this guy is way overthinking that."
It's all good. I too overthink things, so
That's how you. Yeah, that's the best way to progress.
mhm,
Throwing it all out there.
absolutely. I went into a great deal of personal debt to earn a degree in thinking too much about things. So
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Isn't that every degree?
yes,
Pretty much.
absolutely, but
Yeah.
especially philosophy.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So those of us who get involved in this hobby very heavily, who write adventures, who do shows like this, we do it because we love this hobby. And we love this hobby because we have so many great memories involved in it. If you had to pick a fondest RPG memory, what would that be?
Oh man, I remember. On our first show together. You asked me this, and I. This is hard. This is the hardest question of all of them. I can talk about the dynamics of DM versus player all night,
Mhm.
but if you make me do this, this is the worst one. Um, Man, I would probably say, like I would probably say when me, my dad, and my sisters, and sometimes my mom, sometimes would convince her to play with us, would play Dungeon together. I know it's not Dungeons and Dragons or an RPG, but like that was just the true foundation of my childhood, and I strongly believe everything that comes after. Um, so yeah, I would say that, and then I would also say, just the first summer that me and my friends started playing D&D, we just were fanatic about it. And it was our senior, well, it was our second summer. Our first summer where we were no lifing it, like the summer before we started like once a week or once every other, and then we really got hooked on it over the winter, and then into that next summer we were playing like every other day. And there was one week where my friends basically stayed at my house like all week, and we would sleep, wake up, and then play D&D all day, and then watch the D&D cartoon at night, and then sleep in my basement, and then wake up. And yeah, it was just you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
just, how do you replace that? Those early days of just absolutely no care in the world, just playing the game.
Yeah,
So it would be between those two for sure.
gotcha. Gotcha. And then the last of these introductory questions, I will say the answer cannot be your wizard logo. Um, it can be literally anything else,
Uh,
as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. But if you could put anything on a T-shirt, what would it be?
Man, Pacesetter merch is got to come as well. We
Yeah.
have to bring. I have to say that, shameless plug. If I had to put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be? God, I remember having an answer to this. Oh yeah, I remember my answer was sort of like a cheat one. I would put the introduction. It's not our logo, but it's like the introduction to my solo adventure Into the Unknown. I'd put that like on the back of a T-shirt,
Mhm.
and then put something from Into the Unknown on the front, or maybe just the title in its font, which I know that's a cheat answer. It'd probably be that. It'd probably be that.
It it has some like personal significance to you, so it's not necessarily a cheat answer. It's not just like a piece of merch that you would make for your show or
Yeah.
your game company, or it because it's something that you personally created. It's like when it's kind of similar to your dad's answer of he wants the map of the first dungeon he ever created on a shirt, and
Okay.
that it's
That's a good one.
very it has personal significance to you. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think like outside of that, I would probably put like a bowl of spaghetti on a shirt and just wear that around. Yeah, that would be my second answer. Or my my
would this be
non
like a
cheat answer.
cartoonish bowl of spaghetti or like an oddly realistic looking bowl of spaghetti?
It would be like a painted version of, yeah. It would be like a mosaic. Like it would be beautiful. It would be the most beautiful bowl of pasta you would ever look at on a t-shirt,
To
which
the
is a low
point where
bar.
like from a distance someone would be like, why does that guy just have a bowl of spaghetti hovering on his chest, and then they get
But then you get
closer?
closer and you
Yeah.
realize the workmanship that went into that bowl of spaghetti, and you stop doubting and you just accept and acknowledge and come to the light, really. The
Yep.
light of pasta. Yeah. That's what I'm selling. I'm selling pasta.
Ben would like to convert all of you out there to Pastafarianism with a t-shirt.
All you non-believers, just think. Just think of who catered the last wedding you went to. It was probably Italians.
Mhm.
That's all I got to say. Got it on a shirt now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, this first question, outside of these introductory questions, I wanted your raw reaction to it. You might already
Mm-hmm.
know what this is going to be, but I'm 26. You're 23,
4.
24.
4.
We are in a very specific subset of the hobby that has a lot of gray hair.
No, really? Oh, this is
If they have hair at all, it's mostly gray. Uh, what is it like for you creating content that's largely getting seen, largely getting played by that older audience? Now I know that you guys
Hmm.
also reach a younger audience too because your products do really well and are aimed at a very broad swath of gamers. But the circles that you run in, because they're
Hmm.
the circles that I run in, a lot of gray hair. How do you feel kind of like making content in that space?
Honestly, I don't even think about it, which is the marketer's worst nightmare, by the way. Like
Yeah.
not understanding your target audience. But I think once you understand it, you stop stressing about it. So I don't even notice. I don't really care
Hmm.
anymore. It I always don't me wrong. I do love to seek out younger people in the community because I remember being like one of the only young people and not having anyone to relate to. So I try to be that for other people.
Hmm.
But overall, I don't really care. It doesn't change the way I do things. It doesn't change the way I think. It doesn't change the way I write. I just do what I want to do, and then if other people enjoy that cup of tea as well, then it doesn't really matter to me. But there are points to it, right? Like there are certain points to it where um, the number of gamers around our age who are also interested in the OSR is quite small. So what do we do about that?
Hmm.
I do ask myself that question all the time as well. So not completely blind to it, but I don't really care. You could be 20 or 70, just play the same game.
Yeah. And honestly, like that's a very healthy mindset to have towards it. I mean, like creators that hate the particular people that like pick up their works don't tend to last very long and don't tend to make stuff that they're very passionate about. You see that a lot with musicians in particular kind of grow to
Mhm.
hate their audiences. Um,
Yeah, I think it depends on the kind of audience because this is
yeah.
actually something I've analyzed a lot in different. I've been lucky to be a part of a few different industries, and this does happen a lot.
Yeah.
from person to audience. But I think when that happens, too often it's too like they're too intersected, you know, and they just know too much about each other or whatever. There's no like line where it's like, okay, like at some point this is a band versus an audience, right? Like, uh, yeah, but I don't find that happening a lot in the tabletop industry, because I think a lot of us people who write or design things just see ourselves as like players or dungeon masters first, who just happen to like get artwork next to the crazy words that we think of. You know, that's the only difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That really is something that I love about people who create RPGs. Even the really big, well, not the really, really, really big names. That's a different subject altogether that I'll come back to. The people who created, what we have today, the Zeb Cooks, the Tim Casks, the Alan Hammocks, they just walk around the convention like everyone else does. They just run games like everyone else does. They're there to meet with the people who have allowed them to kind of, live this crazy awesome life where they get to make these games for a living, and they're the few people who get to say that they made a living writing Dungeons and Dragons. But they, like you said, they're gamers first, and to a person, they're gamers first. And that's what I love about something like North Texas, and that's what breaks my heart about some of the larger RPG conventions out there, because now you're starting to get people in the space who have realized that there's a degree of celebrity, or are chasing some kind of degree of celebrity, and they tend to...
Don't get me wrong. Though some of these designers who now walk around North Texas were getting mobbed at Gen Con.
Yes.
And they openly admit to they could not wear their badges half the time.
Yeah.
Because people didn't know their face. They just knew their name. So they would take off their badge and then walk through the vendor hall and then put it back on once they're out. So, we're just years removed from that fame, you know?
But
I agree with you that there is a celebritized part of the industry that I don't usually know what's going on with it.
And I don't want to... This is something that could turn into like an entire episode in and of itself. I don't want to go down that road. I did that with Tankar once.
Oh, Lord God, Eric. Well, you know what I say is... it's just... Eric. I've known Eric for years. I'm allowed to do interpretations.
That was a great Tankar, by the way. Can you do Bad Mike?
No, I can't do Bad Mike. No, I'm not going to do Bad Mike. Well, I would have to sit up like really close to the camera with my microphone in my mouth, and that would be Bad Mike. So I'm going to get crap from them for this. I'm just immediately regretting this decision.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Clip it, send it to them.
They're friends of the show. Don't worry about it. They've both been on.
Yeah.
We're all good. We're all good.
I'm just setting on fire your past guests. Give me each one.
Give me your Levi Combs impression. Give me your Skinner Green impression.
Oh, that's too... I don't cuss that much. I can't pull that one off. Some of the words that man comes up with, I'm just impressed. I'm like, where did that come from?
I need to bring Skeeter back on again. It's always been too long. There are a couple people who just like seem to always have access to the show. Levi's one, Luau Lou's one, but then Skeeter has only been on twice, and I'm just now getting around to Casey Christopherson's second appearance. So there's like a lot of kind of people in that sphere that I need to like reach out to more and bring on the show more, because they're awesome. But
yeah, Levi is, God, that guy. Levi and I have the weirdest relation, like not weird, but just like I have the most like the utmost respect for Levi, and I at least he says it back. Like, we're very good friends.
Yeah.
But we just like push each other so well, I feel like, at the same time too, because we're in two different genres of tabletop publishing, but both do 5e and OSR. So we're the perfect like duo / friends, because our audiences are different but same enough to where everything just works out hunky dory. So Levi's the best. He's just one of the nicest guys I've literally ever met. And every time I see him, I'm like, what's going on up there? There's no way this is but he's just that nice.
Some of the stuff that I have a similar relationship with Levi, and some of the stuff that he comes up with, I'm just like, how are you?
Yeah.
Not even like, what are you? How does all this converge and like smash together in your head and come out, and doesn't seem like it's coherent, but it is somehow.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm like reading the thing that he wrote, and I'm like, Levi, what? This is not fantasy. This is just dark dwellings of your brain.
But yeah, it really is like a great community that we find ourselves in. And you mentioned something earlier. There's a like really great family environment around kind of the North Texas branch of the OSR crew, in that obviously you kind of were brought in by your dad, but also like Casey's kids come, Skeeter's kids come. There's all kinds of like families that have now just become involved in all of this, which is where a lot of kind of the younger people are coming into the OSR. Were you kind of like one of the first to be like brought in by your dad?
I can't really say because I don't remember. I'm gonna be honest. I would say yes. Mm-hmm. I know Bill Webb's kids were there.
Yeah.
I don't remember I must have met him the first year. I'm almost positive I met them the first year, because we've always been pretty close because of that, because both of our dads are named Bill and they're both crazy. So it was a really easy bonding, like no, but I think I would say Bill's kids probably were first, but I would say maybe I'm closer after. That'd be a better question for them. I'm not gonna lie. I don't remember, but there are certainly by far more kids at these conventions now than when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. My first convention was probably like 8 years ago. So since then it's grown a lot. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. I forgot about Bill's kids because he has a lot of kids.
Just got 2.
Oh,
Bill Webb.
No, you're right. No, you're right.
Yep.
I don't know who I was thinking of.
Yeah, just daughter and son.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're right. Just everyone ignore me. Listen to him.
No, you're good. They're J&J, John and Jillian.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I must be thinking. I'm gonna drive myself crazy if I keep going down. If I keep trying to pull on that thread. Anyway.
Yeah, everyone's like kids and who belongs to who. It's just convention kids, and then they're all in one area.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But yeah, I figured you were kind of like closer in on close to one of the first to come in, because you are a good bit older than like Skeeter's kids or like Casey's daughter, because you're closer to my age and they're like just now getting out of high school, I think. So
yeah,
I figured you were kind of towards the beginning of that trend.
Yeah, I would think I'm the oldest. Bill's oldest daughter, Jillian, I think she's 2 years. Yeah, she's 2 years younger than me because she's the same age as my sister. That's how I remember it. So, and then John is just in his freshman year of college. Right now, actually, just started. So yeah, I would be the oldest by like 2 years.
Yeah,
but Jillian's up there. Like, she's been to a ton of conventions. She's done a ton of DMing. Yeah, definitely share that spot.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned, the thought that you've put into, how do we get younger people to kind of be interested in the OSR? I have some thoughts on that, but I want to hear your thoughts before I chime in. What kind of conclusions or ideas have you come to about?
No, my conclusion is my conclusion is there's no conclusion. And I say that with a grain of salt, in that it's not like that there's no answer or it's impossible. It's that it has to be done naturally, not in a forced way. So it's kind of hard to say like exactly how it should be, right? Like I play games with my friends. We usually play 5e, but I we always crave that 1e game. So we'll always go back and play it. And if that's the future of the OSR, then it sucks, but that might be the way it is for now until we can build upon something new. And I think that is kind of where the direction is eventually going to go. I My prediction is what's going to happen is someone's going to make a 5e and like AD&D retro clone where they try to mix the two, and that is going to be the new OSR, and it's going to like be a new version of it. Because I no one's really done that in my opinion to like a bunch of success. So unless I'm missing so well, you know what I mean? Like unless I'm completely wrong on that, which I might be. But I think to get people into OSR, there's a million things people do. Like you can go to your local game store and just say, hey, I want to run a 1E slot or a BX slot. You know, after around after school times, I'm going to promote it with the high school as well and see if any kids want to come and try out the game, you know, after school or something. You can reach out to book clubs or game clubs that reside within schools and say, hey, here's some of the older books if you ever want to try them on this. It's sort of through that, and it's just not a sexy answer. There's not going to be like an OSR critical role or something, you know, that really just captures in and that all that audience, because that audience resists it anyway. So at some point, the audience, the OSR community, we have to reflect upon what we're doing and why we're not as popular that you might be as 5th edition. And then you have to look at the why. Well, most people don't want to actually do the why. They don't want to do the game show. They don't want to do the talk shows. They don't want to do the podcast. Well, that's how it's so big. So if we don't want to do the why, then we accept what the community is and build upon it and continue that infrastructure. So that way in 20 years, it's still there. Which is through things like the Gen Con auction, through North Texas RPG Con, through school book clubs, like I said, and on and forth, right? You know, so that's sort of where my ideas lie within that. That like, how do we keep it going, kind of thing.
And something, kind of to your point there, something that has been really valuable in keeping it alive, especially in getting younger generations who aren't necessarily willing to open up those old BX or 1E books and try to figure out what Gary Gygax was trying to say. Through all
very hard, by the way. If like it's not easy. Like if you get a new player the 1E player's handbook, they will come back to you with questions. Many of them.
But we've got things like OSE and Swords and Wizardry and stuff like that take that skeleton structure, that rule set that's so strong and so fun to play in, but make it actually somewhat legible. So when it comes to going to these RPG programs that some schools are having with a Swords and Wizardry book rather than 1E AD&D, even for as great as 1E AD&D is, you're going to have more traction if you're showing it off as Swords and Wizardry, which is a hell of a lot easier to read and a hell of a lot easier to explain.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know where kind of the origins of Swords and Wizardry lie.
Right. But even there's still plenty to do still. Like I love Swords and Wizardry, I love OSE, but that's still not the answer to that like how do we get that, you know, because it's still not going to have a mass effect because there's just certain things that are intrinsic to why people like new editions they're left out of the old editions completely.
Yeah.
They're not even mentioned. So, you know, there's still that whole idea, but not to discredit anything that anyone does, by the way.
Right.
Like I said, I'm great friends with Matt Finch. But yeah, it's just going to take a while. It's just going to be through how everything else is in the world. You know, people always freak out. They're like, oh, what if our family culture dissipates in a few generations? Well, that's sort of up to you to teach your kids your family culture and keep it going on, you know? And same thing with everything. So it's just on us, you know? Yep. Basically what I'm saying is bully your friends into playing D&D like I did. You know, that's the best way.
Now, Victor makes an interesting point in chat here. And it's something that I've heard people talk about just kind of over and over again. But there will be 5e grognards, as he puts it, once 1D&D comes out. who
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
look
Yeah,
at
I think it will.
they'll look at the changes because I mean like they're for as much as people don't like fourth edition, there are people who when 5e came out they were like, well, that's not the way we played back in 4e.
Yeah, it happens every edition. It
Yeah.
happens every edition. They capture a new audience and then retain a certain percentage of the past audience.
Yeah.
And it's the retention rate is never 100%, and it never will be, because people get attached to 5e. But I think there will be a overwhelming amount of people who keep on playing that closer to PHB version of 5e than like D&D Next or 1D&D, and all the way up to like where we are with the power level with Tasha's,
Yeah.
just that power creep that's happened over time. And we'll see what happens. It's certainly not terrifying as a publisher to see what happens, but
Yeah.
it'll all be good in the end. It'll all work out the way it's meant to.
Mm-hmm. But no, as far as kind of my attempt at an answer to how you bring young people into kind of the OSR mindset, uh, I'm going to answer with a question for you that is going to kind of come out of the blue, so bear with me here. Do you like Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah.
Why do you like Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Probably the sense of, and I'm going to answer this in a very old school way, but probably the sense of mystery and danger. Like the mystery is dangerous, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people who are our age have that same answer. They just don't know they have that same answer. There's something about that movie in particular. It's one of the most recent movies that captured what I see as kind of the essence of old school role play, in that you have a hero who's extremely vulnerable going up against something that's way bigger than he is, in that he's essentially one dude with a whip and a revolver going up against the entire Third Reich. And he's chasing after an artifact that no one really understands. It has this power that's kind of beyond comprehension. And when it's unleashed, it does some crazy and terrible and deadly things. And there's something about the way that movie is structured and the way it's strung together that really presents, like you said, the mystery and the danger. And so I think the way that the OSR is going to capture young people is to lean into kind of the authenticity of, this is the way we play these role-playing games, where you don't know anything about this world that you're wandering into. You literally just came off the farm and picked up a sword, and you are going to find yourself in over your head. In a lot of circumstances, you might die. And if you live, it's only going to be because of just sheer raw determination and gumption, a little bit of intelligence, and a whole lot of luck. And it's in those moments that kind of like the greatest stories are made, whether people realize it or not. And so I think all the OSR needs to do to continue to thrive is to just like throttle that up to 11. Don't lean so much on this is the right way to play D&D. Don't lean so much on back in my day. Yes, it's called OSR and the words old school are right there in the title, but lean more on, we're going to tell a story in which you are going to face all of the dangers that the world can throw at you, and hopefully you will survive to tell the story. And I think that kind of rawness and that kind of authenticity is something that's irresistible to people who like stories like this.
Yeah, I think a good way to relate it is like a 5e is like a heavy magic campaign, and 1e is like a low magic campaign. It's just, if we as members of the OSR are shaking our fists and saying, why are you playing 5e? That game is so terrible. Why would anyone ever say, oh, that guy's like really cool, that guy's not totally insulting everything that I like, I'm gonna go for sure play games with them instead?
Yeah.
No one ever does that. When has anyone ever done? If someone tells you your sports team sucks, you're not going to be like, oh, thank you, you're right, now I'm a Cleveland fan. That's never going to happen. So why are we applying any of that logic to trying to bring people into our game? It
First
doesn't
of
need
all,
to be one or the
Cleveland
other.
has no room to say that anyone's sports team sucks.
Yeah, that's true. This is coming from a Lions fan, by the way. Like a Lions fan, a Tigers, Detroit sports overall are just awful right now. But there's actually something in chat that I wanted to. Am I allowed to disagree with someone in chat?
Yeah, you can disagree with whoever you want.
Are you sure? Can I respectfully disagree with someone?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is something that I actually talk to a lot of people about at conventions. Someone in chat said that 5e is more of a board game pretending to be a role-playing game. I actually think it's the opposite. I think 5e is closer to an RPG than old school is. Old school comes from war games, and then chainmail, and then D&D, as we know, right? We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the opposite. Role-playing game entails that there's some sort of customization because you're stepping into a role. 5e has more customization.
Yeah,
I actually think of it the other way. I think of 1e as actually closer to a board game. Neither of them are even remotely close to a board game, but nonetheless, if we had to pick one, I would say old school is actually closer to a board game or war game than 5e. 5e is very far removed from wargaming. There's no aerial rules even really mentioned in 5e, other than the basic ones, right? Like I remember Frank Menser talking my ear off about how dragons just couldn't turn around. They couldn't do a U-turn because they had to go all the way around. And he's like opening the rule book and like this, and I'm like, Frank, just have the dragon turn. I don't really care. So I actually disagree. I think that old school is more wargaming and board gaming, whereas new school is much more like, yeah, screw it. The dragon turns. Oh, well, let's move on.
I agree as well, and I think 28 millimeter who put that in chat. He says it's a lot easier to theater the mind older D&D games than newer D&D games. I think that is I think that's a perception issue, because I think it's easier, and it sounds like you think it's easier to theater the mind 5e than like very early, still leaning on chainmail, like old school D&D.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Square, everything makes more sense. The squares make sense. The feet per square makes better sense. It's not in, 9s, 12s. It's in 30s, 35s. It's feet. Yeah, I actually think, I meet, I don't know, this is a question for you too. I meet a lot more people who play 5e who say they play Theater of the Mind, whereas if I ask almost any old school player, they play with minis.
Yeah, I've had a mix. I started playing Theater of the Mind. I play minis now just because I have a plastic and lead addiction, and I have to have some reason to keep buying those things. And painting them. I like painting them, but I also want to use them. But and I see this from Victor in chat as well. There's also a lot of kind of stone throwing from the 5e side towards the grognards. And honestly, what I think needs to happen, there has to be concessions on both sides here. I don't want to sound like a fence sitter, because you guys know I'm not. You know where I stand on all this. The 5e people need to acknowledge that the grognards were pushed into lockers and made fun of when they were young, so that you guys could have Joe Manganiello on a live stream with a bunch of other celebrities, and everyone thinks D&D is cool and fun and all that. So that needs to be acknowledged. Same time, grognards, you need to realize that a lot of the stuff you don't like about 5e is also the stuff 5e players don't like about 5e. And that's evidenced by the fact that so many campaigns end after 6 sessions. So rather than being antagonistic about it, you need to reach out and say, hey, we're in the same hobby. We like different aspects of it, maybe. There's differences here. your games keep ending in 6 sessions. Let's talk about how to not do that anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that if someone throws a stone at you, the first reaction shouldn't be to throw a stone back.
Right.
Is really, you should understand why they're throwing the stone.
Yeah.
Maybe it is something you did, right? Like maybe it's something that's wrong about the game. There's no question that there are some modules and some pieces of literature created by in the OSR that are not, they're not great. They're either a little sexist or a little racist, whatever it may be. But it's the same thing in 5e. There's still plenty of that as well. Or there's just a different version of it, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just being like, oh, everyone is racist or sexist because of this, maybe let's just agree on the singular issue that it is, and then move on and figure out how we can move away from that. But people don't want to do that. They just want to throw the stone back.
Yeah. All I want is a world where an old dude walks up to a young dude at a convention, puts his hand on his shoulder and goes, "Hey kid, you like Conan?" And the kid goes, "Yeah." And then they start talking about Conan. That's what I want.
Well, that stuff happens all the time. Like that's the thing too. Like you would just never know if you didn't go into it saying like, yeah, OSC or OSR is the best and New School sucks. Then I think you would be shocked on how well people get along with each other.
Yeah.
You know, and how little difference there actually is in the way that you play the games or what you want to achieve when in the. Because at the end of the day, it is true the two different systems can achieve different things without, you know, in the realm of the game. But at the end of the day, you're beating up bad guys and getting magic for it and getting rewarded. And so it's just silly to think that they're so different. They're not.
Yeah. And if I could encourage OSR GMs to do anything, I know we all kind of love our retro clones and stuff like that. And I love running DCC for people. I love introducing people to RPGs through like Dungeon Crawl Classics. That's my favorite thing to start people with, because the rules are pretty short and relatively simple. And there's not a whole lot of like massive amounts of choices like there is in 5e, especially now. But old school GMs who like really know how to run old school style, if you can adapt that to 5e for like a specific game, just to show some younger players like, here's how we used to run things and here's how you still can run things, and it makes for a great time if you try it. I think that would bring a lot of people over. If we can soften our approach, acknowledge that, yeah, there's good points about your game, I like this one a little bit better. Like that Chevy commercial. That one's nice, but I like this one. If we can take that approach, I think we'll be a lot better ambassadors to our side. And ultimately, because I think the OSR side of the pond has better stories and better opportunities for adventure within, you know, the games that we run, I think if we're kinder, and if we, you know, extend a hand and say, hey guys, come on over here, try this out, we're going to get a lot more people. And so I think we need to be uncompromising but kind. And hopefully that's something that I can do in my approach, because I've been adversarial as well. But, you know.
That was great. That honestly, that summed it up perfect. That was a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. I mean, I do see it a lot. I do see a lot of people ask me, oh, why aren't there young people in the OSR? And I'm like, well, that's because you're kind of mean. Like, have you ever thought of that? Like that sometimes you just complain too much about the youngsters doing their thing. Like, were you not that youngster one day? Come on. Like, we've all been there. Even my cousins now, like, they don't play the same video games I did. I'm not like, oh, like, Rocket League is trash, or Fortnite is trash, or Roblox is trash. I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Like, I played this. This is like, I guess, retro now. Like, it's just a different generation. There's nothing wrong with it. It's different. Nothing wrong with being different.
Yeah, I played that retro game, Star Wars Battlefront 2.
That game was so damn good, dude. I mean, me and my friend would sit in his like bonus room at his house and play that game for hours, just non-ending.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good. I have it downloaded on my PC, right? I always keep it around just in case.
I've got it on my desktop. I put mods on it this weekend and I fired it up.
Oh, nice.
There's some great mods
Why
out there.
you young whippersnappers? See, that's the thing. This is why people don't know what to do with me and you, because I grew up in old school and now I'm in both communities. They don't know what to do with me, right? What are you gonna tell me? No, as if like Tim Kask and Frank Menser weren't my best friends when I was 13. You know, like you're gonna tell me no? Mike Merles buys it very much in the past bought a lot of our miniatures, and I became comfortable with him as well. I've been very comfortable with Matt Mercer over the years. Every time we've hung out, he's just fantastic. Same with Manganiello. So people don't know what to do with me.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah, and I have levied some harsh criticism at Matt Mercer in the past. Not so much at Matt Mercer, but at Critical Role just as an institution. But I don't doubt for a second that he's in it for the love of the game. Because he doesn't have to be here. He could voice 50 more characters and make even
legit.
more money. But yeah, he's
pretty legit.
Yeah, he's...
No, Victor, I know you're joking. I just like to point that out, that people just don't know what to do with me. It's hilarious. He's legit, dude. Yeah. For anyone who's like Mercer hating, he came to our booth one year, he was walking around GaryCon. Sorry, I don't remember which one it was. And him and I just started talking, and my friends watched the show, so we were all talking to him. And as we're talking to him, a line started to form behind him, like for people to get autographs. So I noticed it, and I was like, "Hey, if you want to sign these autographs, you can. If you want to move out of the hallway, you can step into our booth," because we had like an open concept where there was a shopping area.
Yep.
So Matt came into our booth for like an hour and just signed autographs for an hour. Didn't care. And I was talking to his assistant, who also worked at Disney in her past, so we were talking about that.
Yep.
I was like, I don't want to feel like I trapped him, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to feel like if he doesn't want to do this. And she's like, no, he just does this all the time. And I'm like, well, he's a great guy. He's not hiding in his hotel room. He's like out with the people. He's just, like Gary Guy, like not to compare him to Gary, but that's how the TSR people were at Gen Con back in the day.
Yep.
They couldn't walk around.
Yeah. And
so anyway, yeah. My 2 cents on Matt Mercer. Good dude.
Victor sums it up pretty well. I've never watched a single episode of Critical Role. Everything I've heard about Matt Mercer has been exactly what you said. And, the rest of the Critical Role cast, I haven't heard a bad thing about any of them. My problem is with the Critical Role fans, because it's the same thing as like when My Little Pony was huge. It's the same thing with those fans. It's the same thing with Rick and Morty fans. Same thing with certain anime fan bases. Yeah, it's just like turn it down 2 notches.
They can radicalize for sure.
Yeah.
They can for sure radicalize. And I've been lucky to have nothing but good interactions, but I have heard of bad interactions. But I think that's just when you have an audience of that scale. That's just it's the way around.
And there's a particular problem with our generation where liking something gets like absorbed into, this is my personality, that I like this thing.
Yeah. And my friends and I talk about this all the time. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
And like you mentioned,
terrible.
You mentioned working for Disney. There's a lot of people who do that with Disney. The Disney adults.
I was one. I'm reformed. I've recovered. Yeah, no, I'm still one. I'm lying. But yeah, no, they definitely exist too. They exist too. Yeah, we were just at a League of Legends, if anyone knows that video game.
Yeah.
We were at an online tournament, or not, we were at the in-person tournament for the professional North American summer championship. And the same thing, there was just a lot of like weird League people there. And we're like, whoa, you are a basement dweller. You just play this game all day. It's great.
But yeah, I do think, and again, that kind of leads back into the OSR, because as much as it's a problem for our generation, that's also kind of, it's a problem for fandoms as a whole. It's kind of one of the bad parts of being a geek, that there are a lot of people who have internalized their love of a particular game or movie or show, and if you attack that thing or if you don't like that thing, it's like you don't like me or you're attacking me. And I, more than anything, I want to see that mindset die.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice. I mean, God, Rings of Power is not that bad, people. Put the pitchforks down. It's not that bad.
I don't want to watch
You all just want a bitch.
My stance on Rings of Power is no.
Where else do you go without the Silmarillion?
Say what?
Where else do you go? What else do you do without the Silmarillion?
I just, they made 3 really good Lord of the Rings movies. All the Tolkien books are still there. The animated movie is fun every now and then. And
do you think The Hobbit is better than this? The Hobbit movies?
Again, I haven't seen Rings of Power, so I can't. I have no frame of reference.
So you're not even. Oh no, it's awful, Victor. Oh no, it's not great. It's not good by any means. I'm not saying it's good, but let's all just calm the hell down. There's still great parts of that show. They're still awesome with that show, for sure. There's a lot of really cool new characters. Galadriel is different. The understatement of a century, but she's getting there. You can see it in her eyes. She's getting there. There's just a lot of progression going on, and it's not Tolkien, so everyone's going to complain no matter what. This is like the Harry Potter community. They're just going to complain no matter what, and I can say that because I'm a loud member of the community. So yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we don't have time for that because I'll run circles around some people on Tolkien. But I'll also get my circle ran a few times as well. So let's ignore that.
But it's one of those things, and I agree with Victor. There's nothing wrong with saying you don't like a show or saying that a show is awful.
I don't need to see 100 Facebook posts about it.
Right,
I'll be the one to say it. I don't need to see the negativity all day, every day.
There you go.
Yeah, my dad doesn't like Rings of Power. We've butt heads on this a bunch, and I've proved him wrong a bunch on a bunch of different things, and he still doesn't like it. Yeah.
Well, and
if I'm going to take a shot at someone, I'm going to take a shot at my dad. He can take it.
But my whole stance on this is if something doesn't look good to me, I'm not going to consume it anymore. Because I know that, if it looks like I'm not going to like something and I go in and I don't like it, I'm just going to be upset.
You're just judging books by the cover. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, if the cover sucks, then don't be surprised if people don't pick up your book, is all I'm saying.
You know whose covers don't suck is Pacesetter Games.
Pacesetter
you can
Games
shop
covers do
all
not
of their
suck.
books at pacesettergames.com and get plenty of 5th edition books. You can get plenty of OSR books. We got 1E, we got BX, we got Swords and Wizardry. There's plenty on there, whatever flavor you want. Pacesettergames.com.
But
best covers in the game, and Ryan approves them.
Absolutely.
So where else can we go from here?
But just to end that, to put a pin in the judging books by its cover thing, you all know that I love Robert E. Howard. I love Conan the Barbarian. I think the stories are amazing, not just because I'm related to the man. I love Conan.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me that the same amount of people would have bought and read those Conan the Barbarian books if instead of the Frank Frazetta covers, they had a 5-year-old's really poor picture of a dog on them and Conan the Barbarian written in marker. So there is an element that the cover needs to reach out to people. And if the
designers are full of shit. If they ever tell you the cover doesn't matter, that is the one thing that project managers stress over the most is the quality of the cover. Promise. I will let industry secrets fly. I don't care. No one owns me.
But yeah, that's... So when people say you're judging a book by its cover, that's an element that needs to be judged. But at the same time, I do understand what you're saying, that, you need to try things and not get so freaked out about, whether or not a show is good or not. But as for me...
one thing Go ahead, sorry.
As for me in Rings of Power, I'm good.
No one's patient anymore. No one's patient. I've seen this in every single TV series that's come out recently. Mm-hmm. A lot of these criticisms are fair, in my opinion. A lot of them are really fair. No one's patient. Everyone talks about how there's no character development, and there's only been like 3 episodes of a show, and they're like, there's been no development. I'm like, because they're still developing. Like, you don't read a book and then like 3 pages in, the character's like, oh, I'm not terrible anymore, I'm going to do everything the right way. That doesn't happen. So I think a lot of it is the way that these shows are released they're set up for failure, because the writers write a cohesive story, not always thinking about like, this is going to be broken up into 10 weeks, and they're just writing a character's progression as they would normally, and then it's show, episode, wait a week, show, wait a week, so you get that whole week to just pick apart and shit on it. So yeah, I think that's a whole big problem of it as well. Yeah, but I know this is a losing argument in chat, so I'm going to stray away from the Rings of Power.
There's an issue with the way that there's an issue with modern serialized storytelling. I think we need to rediscover episodic storytelling in our series, especially if we're going to now, instead of releasing them all at once like Netflix did, where you can binge a show and almost consume it like it's a 10-hour long movie. If we're still going to release things episodically, you need to be able to tell a beginning, middle, end story within 1 hour of television to give people a sense of closure. Even if there's an overall narrative to the series, there has to be some sense of closure by the end of each episode to give people a little bit of satisfaction and not, be picking apart so much that there's so many loose ends, there's not enough development. You have to be aware of the format in which your show is releasing and your story is being told. And I feel the same way, to loop it back to the topic at hand, I feel the same way about D&D sessions. There needs to be something resembling closure at the end of every session so that, there's something to talk about and people aren't kind of, left in suspense with what there can be an element of suspense, but there does need to also be an element of, now we're going to play the sad man walking away music, or now Din Djarin's going to get back in his starship, or whatever kind of episodic story you want to play with there as your metaphor. But I do think we need to rediscover the one and done that version of serialized storytelling, rather than
because narratives can be built within those still, like you saw with The Mandalorian, right? It took a little bit longer, but it wasn't just the forefront of what was going on all the time. Like, the child was there, baby, Grogu was there, but like, The Mandalorian had to go kill this cave creature. That was it. That like this, we can't get off this planet until we do the X or Y. That was the entire episode, and then it carried on with the main story, if you will, afterwards. Which is not the case in the Rings of Power. It's just a bunch of one-off random events that aren't, that I know that are cohesively put together because I've studied the lore so much, but new people have no idea what's going on. They're like, or even some people who just watch the Lord of the Rings movies, they don't know what's going on. Right. So it's just, I get the criticism on that and all that. So totally.
Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I've already kept you a little bit over time, but I felt like we were having a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's awesome.
So I'll just turn this over to you. I know you guys have a lot of stuff to plug. There's lots of great work that Pacesetter Games has done. So where can people find it? Where can people find you? Tell the people where they can give you guys their money.
Yeah, well, you don't have to do that. Pacesettergames.com is the best place for that, the latter part. But Pacesetter Games across everything. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we have all of them. We have a newsletter as well, which you can access through the website. And that's pretty much it. If you like my personality, you'll find that in my books. I'm very out there, and I like to just, I like to say what's on my mind, and that's how my characters and NPCs and monsters do as well. So just go check it out, pacesettergames.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, guys, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of Rollin' Bones. Next week, as a reminder, Rollin' Bones is now a Tuesday night show. So, next week, on through the foreseeable future, Tuesday nights, same time, 8 p.m. Central, and we'll be kicking off our Tuesday night Rollin' Bones with a special guest, Crafty Matt Craft, And as if I haven't made enough people angry recently already, our topic is In Defense of 5th Edition D&D. So I hope you guys will join us. I imagine it'll be a very spirited and lively discussion. Matt and I are both on the side of 5e has a lot of good points. So until then, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.